You're listening to Big World Network.
Just Kill Me, Episode 7, Frustration. Written by Wendy Herman. Read by Wendy Herman. It had been 2 weeks since I'd finished Phase 1 of the FBI training program, which consisted solely of filling out forms and completing virtual training modules on the computer. I was so anxious for Phase 2 I could taste it, but I had hit an unexpected brick wall, my security clearance. It was a mystery to me why it was taking so long. The 4 years I had spent in the Air Force should have garnered me top secret clearance before I even walked in the front door. No entity does a more thorough background check than the federal government, and I'd already been through the whole rigmarole once. The only new information was my marriage and my kids, and although it was a span of 15 years, I still didn't understand what the problem could be. I told myself it was a possibility my time in uniform was actually delaying the clearance. I had worked for a 2-star general at one point, and had been required to read everything he did, most of which made no sense to me. But that was more than 17 years ago, and although I had been in the intelligence field, the world had changed so much. I couldn't imagine that the information was the same, even if I had retained any of it in my overwhelmed brain. The problem was that I wasn't authorized to begin Phase 2 until the stinking clearance was granted. All I could do was try to enjoy the unexpected time at home and be patient. Rip called me every morning to update me and tell me to sit tight. He had no idea what the holdup was either, but he was almost as frustrated about it as I was, I could tell. He just kept saying that every clearance was different, and it was no indication as to whether or not it was going to be approved. Most likely, he huffed through the phone on the morning of the 13th day of waiting. Someone is on vacation and it's sitting on their desk. I sighed deeply as I said a forlorn goodbye to Rip, and set my phone on the kitchen counter. "Be patient. This is going to happen," were his final words to me. I took a deep cleansing breath and turned around to see Talia coming to the back door. She was dressed and ready to Zumba her little heart out with Lars, and she was ecstatic, as she'd been every morning these past 2 weeks, to see me still home, which meant I was going to Zumba too. Oh well. There were worse things than staying fit, while Lars, keeper of the sexy six-pack, shouted words of encouragement inches from my face, the sparkling sweat carving little tributaries into his cheek as it meandered down from the top of his bald cranium. Seeing him every morning these last 2 weeks, well, let's just say that Vin Diesel was threatening to bump Keanu Reeves out of first place on my "if I suddenly need a new husband" list. Trevor and I had called a ceasefire 2 days into my waiting game, but were far from back to normal, and it was nice to have a gorgeous man pay attention to me, especially when that man addressed me as Goddess Freya every day. Damn, he was beautiful and smart. Freya was the name of the Norse goddess of love and war, and leader of the Valkyries, the choosers of the slain, girl gladiators who rode over battlefields on winged horses, taking the souls of noble warriors killed in battle and transporting them to Odin's Hall, Valhalla, to feast for eternity. Yeah. That hunky historian might actually be good enough for my Talia, if she ever snapped out of her trance long enough to flirt a little. She was so enamored by him, in fact, that I was a little worried about her. She'd never, ever had trouble communicating with the opposite sex, verbally or otherwise. It didn't help that he did seem to pay a lot of attention to me during his class, but I was certain it had nothing to do with physical attraction. I really had no coordination, and I was inclined to think he saw me as someone who needed a lot of extra help in the Zumba department. I was more of a jogger, and any other activity that required no more than a simple left-right motion. Talia was so good at, well, everything resembling aerobics, that he barely glanced her way anymore. I could only tell her to suck so many times, but she refused to start the relationship with a lie. Relationship? I said, "Tal, it's not a relationship until he actually knows your name, and he'll never know it if you don't tell him." This just got a shrug in response. So unlike her. Then it hit me. This was not another one of her casual crushes. She was more than smitten with Lars. She was in deep, deep smit. Dare I say it? She was in love. All right, universe. Freya, goddess of love and patron of young lovers, accepts your challenge. After the intense workout on this day 13 of my sentence in purgatory, I decided it was time Lars and Talia joined the ranks of the legendary couples in Asgard, the realm of the gods and goddesses. I located Lars at the front of the room, standing in the middle of a small, sweaty crowd of adoring women, and patiently listening to the overflowing praise about his class. This was a daily occurrence. Shameless, all of them, and the ones I recognized were all married, acting like love-struck teenagers. Was I the only adult here? Seriously. I shook my head to regain focus on my newfound mission. I fixed the waistband on my workout shorts and tucked the stray wet hairs behind my ears before I headed straight for the only man in the room, firmly grabbing Talia's arm on the way. This was happening. Hold on to your spandex, Lars. What do you mean there's a problem? I was growing increasingly agitated. Agent Ripley, I can't discuss the specifics with you, said the young male voice on the other end of the phone. All I can tell you is that Freya Douglas' security clearance has been flagged for upper-level review for, discrepancy. Discrepancy? I repeated, but at a slightly louder decibel. What the hell does that mean? Sir, I already told you I can't... You can't tell me the specifics, I know. I finished for him. How long have you worked for the Bureau, Danny? It's Donald. I started 3 weeks ago. Sir. I couldn't help but smile. I could feel my heart rate coming down a little, and decided I didn't want to take my anger and frustration out on this nervous man-boy anymore. Can you tell me whose desk it's on right now? Is that information I'm allowed to know? I asked, in the friendliest tone I could muster. He stammered a second and then blurted out a name. I didn't want to believe it. Are you sure about that? Yes, sir. Positive. I took a deep breath and processed the information. Thanks, I quipped and hung up the phone before he could respond. I'm sure he was grateful, after I'd spent the last 10 minutes ripping the kid a new one. He needed a little toughening up. I was frickin' Mary Poppins compared to some of the other agents he would have to deal with. Especially the one I was about to pay a surprise visit to. I stood in the elevator as it ascended to the top floor of the FBI office building, listening to an instrumental version of Madonna's Like a Virgin, and filling in the words in my head. When the doors opened, I stepped out to a secure entry with 2 very large guards blocking the door. I showed my access badge and put my thumb on a scanner on the wall until a beep accompanied by a green light proved I belonged there. The guard stepped to the side, and the one on the left punched in a code on a keypad below the door handle. A loud buzz sounded, and then a click to indicate the door was now unlocked. The guard opened the door and moved away to let me through. On the other side was a second entry point, this one with 2 guards and an agent, all 3 packing, and the agent with a handheld metal detector. After a thorough pat-down, I was allowed access to the super-secret sanctum through this second door. I entered the secure area and knew exactly where I was going. I turned left down the long hallway and then made a right. The 4th cave on the left was my destination. I knocked, but didn't wait for a response before I burst through the bulletproof door. As I approached the large, and much nicer than mine, desk on the opposite side of the much bigger than mine office, the inhabitant turned in his high-backed chair to face me. "Just get it done, or I'll find someone else," he said harshly into his cell phone as he came into my view. I glared at him to get off the damn phone. "I don't give a shit, Larry. Now you're going to be on the next plane back to Moscow if you can't handle this." He was a real warm fuzzy, this guy. I started drumming my fingers on his desk, loudly. He avoided making eye contact with me, but cleared his throat in frustration. "Listen, your expenses are none of my concern. Yeah, I'm hanging up now, Larry." And he did. He took his time raising his eyes to meet mine. What the hell do you want? He demanded. You know damn well what I want, Trevor, I responded, equally frustrated. Why are you blocking your wife's security clearance?
You're listening to Big World Network.